Hello and welcome to another update. In this one, we'll be covering the Avdiivka front, as there has been significant advances this past couple of hours. So starting out to the south of Avdiivka, let's turn off the recap map. So south of Avdiivka, the Russian forces have managed to capture this trench network area that cannot be seen by the satellite image as it wasn't constructed by the time this satellite image was taken. However, the Russian forces have managed to capture some trench networks here to the south of Avdiivka, leaving only one single line of defense before the Russian forces will be able to enter the city. And this southern residential area of Avdiivka is actually the most fortified position, as it is similar to the residential area here to the west of Bakhmut, where essentially there's a lot of high-rise buildings, which essentially makes it able to have a good overview over the field to the south of it. The Ukrainian forces defending this part of the city are able to get a good overview over this whole area here to the south of the city, allowing them to attack them from these positions. So essentially, a Russian advance from the south is very difficult. And it is only made possible because the Russian forces in the Avdiivka sector are using combined arms tactics, where they're launching a lot of artillery strikes as well as usage of drones and airstrikes on the Ukrainian positions, which allow them to advance with their tanks and armored vehicles to the south. They're essentially attacking straight on the Ukrainian fortifications here to the south of Avdiivka, and this is all part of a larger offensive in the Avdiivka sector. Because we see here to the northeast of Avdiivka, in the direction of Kamyanka, the Russian forces are also attacking in this direction, where they've managed to capture the trench networks to the east of Kamyanka. This one was visible by the time the satellite image was taken, and we can see here they've managed to capture about half of the village, or at least a big portion of it, as they advanced in from the east. And with the takeover of the trenches here to the east of the village, it is now much easier for the Russian forces to take the rest of it. This leaves no villages to the east of the Avdiivka in Ukrainian hands. And all of this while the Russian forces are also attacking to the north of the city, where the Russian forces have managed to capture a big portion of the rail lines that go in and out of Avdiivka to the north, and the only rail lines that goes to Avdiivka have now been cut off. And at the same time, the Russian forces have managed to capture this part here to the north of the rail lines, which allows them to have some positions here to the north. And they have also entered Stepove and are attacking the direction of Berdishi, as well as towards Avdiivka itself and the northern Avdiivsky coke plant, which I'm not exactly sure what it's used for, but there's this large industrial area to the north of the city. So essentially what we're seeing here is the Russian forces are attempting to encircle the city of Avdiivka, and they have started an offensive for that goal. We see here, according to the weather reports, that the weather is currently sunny, and it will be as such for the whole week, and for the past couple of days it has also been, which means that the ground is simply not muddy anymore, so the Russian heavy equipment can actually pass through the dirt. And at the same time, the weather conditions is the same in Bakhmut. And if we look at the moon phase as well, it is now at 2% visibility, and tomorrow night it will be a new moon, which essentially means that there's little to no visibility, natural visibility at nighttime, which gives the Russian forces with the night vision equipment a huge advantage, as night vision equipment is much more widespread in the Russian army than it is in the Ukrainian army, as the Western nations have not sent a lot of night vision equipment to Ukrainian forces, which gives the Russian forces the advantage at nighttime. At the same time, the Russian Air Force and artillery is striking Avdiivka heavily, and it has been since the start of the war, which essentially leaves the most fortified areas of Avdiivka in shambles, as the Russian forces have essentially demolished them. So currently the Russian forces are doing a three-pronged attack, where they're attacking north of the city, combined with the east and the south of the city. Once the Russian forces reach Avdiivka and the final line of defense, and they take Kamyanka, they will push all of the forces to the north and the west of the city, where they will try to cut off any roads in and out of Avdiivka, since they have cut off the rail lines, which is the main supply route, and now they're also going to be focusing on these areas. This will most likely force the Ukrainian forces to redeploy troops from other areas like Avdiivka and others in the northern area, as well as in the western area of Pervomaisk and so on, which would leave them vulnerable, or they could risk losing Avdiivka as a whole in an encirclement by the Russian forces. So Avdiivka is now in a very serious position as Russian forces have launched a small-scale operation that is within the scope of Avdiivka, a not large operational offensive which could risk the encirclement of Avdiivka. And what is the significance of this? At the same time of encirclement of Avdiivka, the Russian forces are also trying to encircle Bakhmut. And this, on the grand scheme of things, actually looks very small. However, it is very significant because these two areas are the most fortified areas of the front line here in the Donetsk region, which leaves essentially the whole supply lines of the Ukrainian army in the Donbass at risk. As with the fall of Avdiivka and Bakhmut, the Russian forces will have the ability to cut off the road to Konstantinivka and at the same time advance northwards to Sloviansk. This will leave the Kramatorsk and Konstantinivka supply lines very damaged, as the Russian forces can physically cut off supplies going between Pokrovsk and Konstantinivka, and at the same time they can threaten the supplies going in and out of Sloviansk. If you look at the positions map, I have mapped out all the positions of both sides as well as the supply lines, and if we look at the supply lines, we can see that all of the supply lines go through Sloviansk and Pokrovsk. If the Russian forces cut off the supplies here and in the north of Sloviansk, there is this connection between Pokrovsk and Kramatorsk. However, the Russian forces can advance towards Pokrovsk as well, cutting that off. By cutting off Pokrovsk and Sloviansk, the rest of the Donbass region have no rail supply, which would leave the Ukrainians with only trucks to supply the Donetsk region. And with that, the Russian forces will have a significant supply advantage as they have supplies going in and out of the Donetsk region from all the way from Belgorod and down to Rostov, all connecting to Donetsk, Mariupol, Horolivka, and so on, supplying the front line. So with all of this into consideration, the fall of Avdiivka and Bakhmut at the same time could significantly harm, or at the worst case scenario for the Ukrainians, completely collapse the Ukrainian defenses in the region. Also, thanks to one of my viewers who joined my Telegram channel and informed me that the Deep State map has actually updated the southern Dacha area of Uledar, which is also similar to the residential areas in Avdiivka as well as Bakhmut that I mentioned is very heavily fortified. We can see that the Russian forces have managed to capture the southern Dacha area, and this is according to the Deep State map. And that is going to be all for this update. Thank you all for watching and have a great day.